The content you're about to hear may be graphic in nature. Listener discretion is advised. This is True Crime XS.
It's interesting. We visit all these different time periods, like when we're doing holiday episodes. I remember a time when I was going to focus on things that happened around the holidays, but that is such a confusing way to do things. So we developed these themes, and one of those themes that we ended up developing was sort of home for the holidays. And this year, I still think with the hostage taking episodes, there's kind of a home for the holidays, like underlying.
I can agree with that.
This one, we're going to the 1980s, but we're also going to Wyoming, which is so interesting to me. And before I looked at all of this, I was very confused because I had to walk myself through the concept of a husband and wife team. And that doesn't happen a lot in crime. I mean, we have the Bonnie and Clyde image that it's almost like an original meme. That's how we know who Bonnie and Clyde are. But that type of relationship is very rare. And
also, we don't know the entire dynamic.
No, we don't. And that's one of the things about this one that I say it's interesting. It's largely interesting, I guess, because of the outcome. We don't know what's happening.
Right, you're right.
But this takes place in May of 1986. And I think the way it's talked about on the internet, it's called the Cokeville, Cokeville, elementary school hostage crisis. So I had to kind of go hunting to learn a little bit about Wyoming for this. Cokeville is this little, very small town in a county called Lincoln County that has, if I'm reading everything correctly, a population of 20,000. It has a population of 20,000. That's the entire county. According to what I read, the town itself, in modern times, there are 622 residents as of 2024 in Cokeville, Wyoming. I don't know how accurate that is, but it is fascinating. This town is ultimately settled in about 1869. The railroad comes through in 1882, and the town grows, and it's incorporated as a town in 1910.
And how many people did you say there were?
622 people as of 2024. So a very small town. This area was largely occupied by Shoshone Indians when the first guy, this guy named Tilford Kutch, arrives in 1869. He opens a little trading post, and he runs a ferry here. The town is known for coal found in the area. Once the railroad got here, the big popular thing locally is sheep ranching. So in 1918, Cokeville was informally called the sheep capital of the world. It's always interesting to me that places like this exist and they're so small. And I wonder, how do you fund things in a town this size? But where we're headed today is to Cokeville. Now, Cokeville in 1979 has one police officer, and that guy is a guy named David Young. He is fired as the only Cokeville police officer by what I assume is the town council or town manager for misconduct. And he moves away. He moves to Tucson, Arizona. And he gets married to a woman named Doris Young. So David and Doris Young. They have ties to several groups, according to the internet. These groups appear to be white supremacist groups. And the first one is the Aryan Nations. The Aryan Nations is this hate group that originally was based in the middle of nowhere, Idaho. It was founded back in the 1970s by a guy named Richard Butler. I know a little bit about them. They're not that interesting to me. This other one is interesting to me, and it's called Posse Comitatus. So that's always interesting because they're using Latin and they're using something that is specifically not allowed in the U.S., but force of the country is Posse Comitatus. That act within the U.S. government is designed to say when and when not to use the military. But this is a very, I'm not entirely sure this thing exists, but for the sake of the story, we're going to say that it exists because these two people, David and his wife, Doris, D-O-R-I-S, are linked to it. It sounds a little bit to me like the Dixie Mafia. Like it's a couple of small groups that are have been said to be together, but maybe not so much.
Right. And some of at least the way they get lumped together, it's white supremacists, right?
Yeah. They're a far-right extremist movement that seem to be linked to other white supremacist groups. They're not specifically white supremacists themselves. They just have links to it. It's said, and I'm saying this because this is mythology. It's said that they are a far-right extremist social movement, started in the late 1960s as a response to counterculture. And the idea is that they spread conspiracy-minded, anti-government, anti-Semitic messages that are ultimately similar to actual white supremacy groups that are known, like the Aryan Nation. They believe that they have been put here to counter an attack on the social and political rights of white Christians. So there is an element of this that's like a white supremacist, nationalist, Christian identity movement element. Many of these people in Posse Comitatus are said to be preppers and survivalists. And from what I can tell, there are actual militias that start forming in the 1990s that are linked to Posse Comitatus, and they sort of become paper terrorists. So are you familiar with the concept of being paper terrorists?
Are you right about it?
It's the use of bogus letters of credit and false liens and frivolous lawsuits and other bizarre legal and pseudo-legal theories and actions as a method of harassment. It's supposed to be like an alternative to armed terrorism or combat terrorism. It is paper terrorism.
Well, yeah, that's sort of what I meant. I mean, you write about it it's a sovereign citizen situation, right?
Kind of, yeah.
That type of thing.
I had read up on this whole false liens thing. I'm not going to spend all day on it, but this is fascinating to me. But a false lien is when you file a document with no legal basis based on either false, fictitious, or fraudulent statements or representations within the statement, essentially against the target, alleging that this target, whoever it is, owes the person who's filing some sum of money for services or goods that have probably not been delivered. So it's a really easy thing to do in terms of cost and effort. But for the person who's the focus of it or the literal target of it, it requires significant time and lawyers' fees for a court to undo it. One of the examples I found on the internet was in 1992, a resident of Seattle filed a false lien of about $63,000 against General Electric for unpaid wages, claiming that GE owed him for work that he had performed, but had, quote, given away to the Internal Revenue Service without his permission. So his wages had been garnished due to outstanding income taxes, which he had refused to pay. They don't name him in a lot of the places, I've seen the names now. I'm not going to name them here because he drags his wife into this, and they file false liens against President Bush. That would have been George H.W. Bush, so Bush 1. U.S. Senator Slade Gordon, Jack Welch Jr., the CEO of GE, 4 IRS agents and their spouses, and various other public officials and judges, including the Attorney General of Washington State. They claim the false liens against the public officials and IRS employees were justified because the latter had failed to help the plaintiffs and were not fulfilling their, quote, oaths of office. So the false liens were only dissolved after many years of legal battles, which eventually resulted in an order barring the couple from filing any further non-consensual lien or encumbrance against any federal employee. It is now federally criminal or criminalized to file false liens, but it was not for a very long time.
Well, the reason that it wasn't is because, duh.
Yeah.
Like, don't file false liens. And it really takes somebody cooking something up to think of that, right?
Yeah.
Because, come on. And to me, that type of nuisance it's very annoying, right? It's like a fly that won't go away, because it's sort of like, and it's so hypocritical, because they're like, well, I'm using the government even though I don't want to pay my taxes, right? Because to file something, you're using what has been set up as the government system, right?
Yeah.
And I find it really interesting. Most of the time, I can just sort of vaguely empathize with the initial principle of what might have led somebody to the point they're at. But it's one of those things where you're like, well, you need to suck it up, right?
Right.
Because all of us are ticked that we have to pay taxes, and that, politicians aren't always doing the thing we think it would be right. We suck it up because we live here in this country. But I find those positions kind of sad, right? Because I realized at some point they were disillusioned, and that's what's led them here. But it's kind of pointless.
It is. And so I have to look at it from the perspective of the priority here seems to have been the Christian identity stuff, meaning they were embracing various anti-Semitic and white supremacist conspiracies. One of those conspiracies they embraced was that the U.S. federal government is completely illegitimate, and that we were all in the hands of a Zionist occupation government. This is kind of documented in their newsletter, and how they have interacted in communications that we're able to see, where they're spreading this, quote, international Jewish conspiracy. Right there, they lose me.
Well, right, because I'm going, yeah, so life is hard, but you don't have to make it harder.
Yeah, if you take that element out of it, all they really are, I think you said the word sovereign citizen, which they're in that realm. What they really are at their base, peeling it all away and just kind of looking at it, is something that this country is kind of based on. And that is, they are tax protesters. So
right.
Ultimately, members of this alleged group, Posse Comitatus, they are refusing to pay their taxes. They don't want to obtain driver's license. They don't comply with regulatory authorities.
I do want to point out, you said that it's what our country is based on, but
not this, just the protestation.
Well, yeah, I got it. But also, I realize that there's a larger discussion here. But basically, initially our country was founded, they didn't want to pay taxes when they weren't being represented, right?
Right.
And so in theory, I say that loosely, based on some of the budget information available, we are paying for our existence here. So it does represent us, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so they deny the validity of fiat money, and that is because of the lack of being backed by gold, which in the Posse Comitatus handbook or whatever they have, they claim that the U.S. Constitution requires it be backed by gold. And again, they do all these weird common law liens. They are involved in various types of what I would characterize as tax protest.
Right. And maybe it's just me, but do you see the irony in like protesting the fiat money concept, but also filing liens?
Right. Yes, I do.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. What I read in like kind of briefly looking at this to see how it might have affected our story today was that they do a lot of that, and this is the origin story of a lot of what we know as sovereign citizen and sovereign citizen extremists. One of the weird things that they did, in spite of everything I just said, in the late 1970s, they attempted to take over Alpine County, California. So they settled there. It's a small population area. I think it's the least populous county in California. So they settle here. It's in the Sierra Nevada mountains. It would be east of Stockton, California. I think it would be basically off of State Highway 4. I'd have to look at it. But the Posse Comitatus people, they thought that if they won all the elections in Alpine County, they would be able to take control of a single county. So they fielded the candidate for sheriff, and the first mistake that they made was they registered a bunch of fictitious voters using post office boxes and vacant lots. In a county of 1,200 people, they had 3,000 votes that year. 6 people were prosecuted for voter fraud. The false registrations for voting were thrown out, and the incumbent sheriff was reelected. So there's that. There were some interesting things that happened to them in the early 80s in an area of Wisconsin known as Tigerton, which had a population of 752 people today. Prosecutors with the U.S. Department of Justice, for some reason, cracked down on them and put a bunch of the Posse Comitatus leaders into prison. And then there are a couple of instances that I think maybe are leading to our story today. There was one that takes place months later, and it's an interesting story I think I'm going to reserve for another day, but they arrest a group of Posse Comitatus actors for what appears to be an assassination. And that's interesting. It happens much later than our story. But in 1975, a guy named Francis Earl Gillings, who was a founder of one of the California posse groups, he led a group of armed Posse Comitatus members to prevent United Farm Workers Union organizers from attempting to organize non-union tomato pickers. So they get into it with Francis Earl Gillings. He has an outstanding traffic warrant. The sheriff's deputies arrive. They get into a scuffle, and there's a shot fired. This is like the earliest thing I found where it's kind of like, all right, maybe these guys were just rabble-rousers. In 1983, they do make the national news, because on February 13th, a Posse Comitatus member named Gordon Call, he kills 2 U.S. Marshals. They had come to arrest him in North Dakota, and he goes on the run. So that's February 13th of 1983. By June 3rd, 1983, there's another attempt to take them into custody. And at that point in time, Gordon Call and the sheriff of Lawrence County, Arkansas, who the sheriff at the time was Gene Matthews, they're both killed. Other members of the same group had been convicted of different crimes, including tax evasion and counterfeiting. They had also been convicted of threatening the lives of IRS agents and judges. And on October 23rd of 1984, one of the members, Arthur Kirk, who was a 49-year-old man at the time, he is killed when a raid on his home is going down. And from what I've read about it, it appears he pulled the gun and started shouting some of his more interesting things here. That could be BS from the officers at the scene. But the bottom line is, this is the group that David and Doris Young are tied to. So, May 16th, 1986, in spite of the fact that David Young had been fired as the only police officer in Cokeville in 1979, they returned to Cokeville, Wyoming. At 1 o'clock p.m., David and Doris, they pull up to the Cokeville Elementary School. They unload a large stash of guns, including 5 rifles and 5 handguns. And for some strange reason, they wheel out a gasoline bomb. It doesn't appear that this is like some kind of revenge for having been fired, but we do have a weird philosophy / manifesto that David has brought with him. And it seems that he believes, after having read Brave New World, that he has been given the privilege of being one of the few people on Earth who can reign over the intelligent children. He has documented what he says are above average achievement scores in the local Cokeville education system. And he saw an opportunity in this little town where he believed he could create essentially a cult. So he starts at the school office handing out a manifesto titled 0 equals infinity. And as he walks around handing out this manifesto to the children and their teachers, he's shouting, "This is a revolution." And the teachers responded exactly how you expect teachers to respond in 1986 to the former town marshal walking through your school with guns, shouting, "This is a revolution," and handing out a manifesto titled 0 equals infinity. They try to read it, and they have no idea what David Young is talking about. Doris has started going classroom to classroom, and she has lured 136 children, 6 faculty and support staff, 9 teachers, and 3 random adults, one of whom is a job applicant, the other of whom is a UPS driver, all into a single first grade classroom. So she has literally put 154 people into a standard size first grade classroom. She has lured them there using various ruses, telling them there's an emergency for some, a surprise for others. There's an assembly, a special assembly is taking place. And I do not know how you fit 154 people into a first grade classroom.
Or why that didn't alarm anybody?
I do not know why this is happening or how this is happening, but it sort of fits with the insanity that is the rest of this story.
Right. And just to back up for a second, the manifesto, there was, I don't know if it was in there or if it was separate, but it was documented in, I guess, his journal that he was coming from a position of, he wanted to reign over intelligent children. He wanted power and control. But he saw an opportunity in the close-knit community where he had been the only police officer. And he had the theme, threaten one and all are at your mercy.
Right.
And that had to do directly with having a close-knit community, because without it, that doesn't work. But I wondered if maybe because he had lived there and been the police officer, maybe that was the best place he could think of to act out his delusion.
I would probably go with that, yeah. So it's just David and Doris doing this. But originally they had some friends they were bringing along. And those friends are Gerald Deppy and Doyle Mendenhall. They have apparently been friends with David Young for a very long time. And they have invested money with him in a get-rich-quick scheme that he had called, quote, the Biggie, which I can only imagine was not nearly as big as David thought it was, because none of this seems to make any sense. So, little background, there's only 500 people living in Cokeville at this time. 154 of them are all in one first grade classroom. We get a little information about what life was like for them later on. Now, from what I can tell, David did go to college. He went to Chadron State College in Nebraska. He had earned a degree in criminal justice. He was literally a police officer in this town, but he was also considered the town marshal. He doesn't even make it out of his 6-month probationary period in 1979 when he does that. But when he meets Doris Waters, who will become Doris Young, she's a divorcee working as a waitress and a singer in a bar. During the two of them are from Cokeville, by the way. They go to Tucson because David's lost his job. During their time in Tucson, our insight comes from Bernie Peterson. Bernie Peterson is Doris Young's daughter. She says that during that time of writing the manifesto, David became increasingly hermit-like and reclusive. He focused on these bizarre philosophical readings and rantings. And to be quite honest, it sounds like he is going deep into some level of schizophrenia, some kind of psychotic. So Doris is taking part-time jobs. She's housekeeping, she's waitressing, she's supporting their lifestyle. They are living in a mobile home with David's youngest daughter from his first marriage, who was named Princess. And Bernie is the one giving us the story. That's Doris's daughter. David is the father of two at this time, but his oldest daughter did not want to talk to him. They're estranged. She is not in his life. So the biggie plan that David's friends had invested in is this moment where we're going to be at this school. He apparently had recently read Brave New World. Have you ever read Brave New World?
No.
Aldous Huxley. It's, I believe it's written early 30s. I think it's published in 32 or 33. And it's a dystopian novel. It's sort of the inverse of 1984, which is published much later. It's an interesting read. It is bleak, to say the least. But having read it, it has influenced what he is doing here.
Right. And he actually has Gerald Depp and Doyle Mendenhall handcuffed in his van outside of the school because they refused to participate.
He does, because he had refused to reveal his plans until moments before it unfolded. He had been pitching them that he was going to be creating this community.
Right. And Princess also, she was with them when they went into the, now I don't know how old she was, but Princess entered the elementary school with David and Doris, but she was like, I'm not doing this. And she left and reported the incident.
Yep. She goes to the town hall and she reports what's happening. So what David reveals to Gerald and Doyle is that they're going to take these children hostage. And they are going to request $2 million in ransom for each child. Afterwards, they are going to detonate this bomb, but take the money and the children to this new place they're going to build with the money where he is going to be, quote, God. Now, at this time, everything I found indicates that David and Doris Young are not religious. They are not going to a church. They are not involved in a specific cult. They are part of the other organizations I mentioned, and they're said to be spiritual. According to some of the writings, David appears to believe in reincarnation. And I think the idea was they were going to all die except take the money and the children with them. And when they came back, they would have the money and the children, which is why I say I think there was some kind of psychotic or schizoaffective something happening here. So he can't let his two friends go, Gerald and Doyle, because they will definitely tell that he's about to do this. He has them handcuffed inside of the van. He takes the daughter in, as you mentioned. He's got all these guns. Princess, fleeing, literally takes the van and drives away. Now, they're never charged. That's Princess, that's Gerald and Doyle. None of them are charged. But we're still back to having to deal with the fact that we have 154 people in a 30-capacity student first grade classroom. And the first thing that all these 150 people are seeing when they come into this room is all the guns spread out on the teacher's desk. And I have to describe the bomb for you. This bomb is a large improvised explosive device. It has been constructed from a small two-wheeled shopping cart that has two baskets. One is on top of the other. The top basket contains a gallon milk jug of gasoline that has been wired with a blasting cap. Below that jug, in the other basket, are two tuna fish cans, so like, chicken of the sea cans. They're filled with a mixture of aluminum powder and flour. They are meant to aerosolize and deflagrate or combust subsonically following the detonation.
A poof.
Each of these has their own blasting cap. They are linked together, and then throughout the baskets, there's chain links like you would find from like a chain, gunpowder, and boxes of ammunition that will act as continuing shrapnel. The mechanism is wired to a dead man switch. So a dead man switch, I'm sure people have heard that term before. It is a switch that is designed to be activated or deactivated if the person holding the switch becomes incapacitated in whatever way. It's a terrible way to switch up an explosive, but that's what he's done here. That dead man switch is a wooden piece separating two metal connectors with the jaws of a clothespin. So what is happening is it leaves the circuit incomplete, and that circuit is going to be powered by a little 9-volt battery. So once the wooden piece is removed, the two metal connectors will complete the circuit, and the bomb will blow up. And for some reason, the wooden piece that has to be removed is tied to a string, and that string is tied to Doris's wrist.
That doesn't sound like it sounds like there may be a little bit more involved than a dead man switch, but okay.
Yeah.
I get the idea. It sounds like she's got to pull it out, right? She's
got to do some stuff there, in my opinion. But I think
that was the idea, it's insurance, right?
It is insurance.
The whole point of a dead man switch is to say, I've got a bomb, and if you kill me, it's going to blow up anyway, right?
Yeah. So the jug of gasoline that's set up in here, it has a little leak in the bottom of it. So while they're moving into the school and gathering all the people, the gasoline is slowly dripping into the tuna fish cans. So the aluminum flour mixture that has been created to aerosolize and deflagrate is going to be unable to aerosolize. Just throwing that out there.
Because it's wet.
Yep.
Yeah.
The leaking gasoline has a terrible smell. And teachers start to open the classroom windows. And this is going to create vents.
Just really quick, Dave and Doris are both from Cokeville. So does everybody know them?
Yep.
Do you have any idea?
Yep.
Oh, they do know them.
Yep. Everybody will know who they are. Not in a good way.
No, but I mean now.
Yes.
Are they going with them
here.
because they knew? Okay. That's what I was wondering.
Yep.
Because instead of opening the windows to create vents for the impending bomb explosion, right? I just was curious why they didn't, leave.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Let's kind of describe what happens here. So we've got all these people in the classroom. According to, the stories after the fact, he has demanded a ransom of $308 million, which in, I guess, today's money, that's like asking for $1 billion, basically. He wanted an audience with then President Ronald Reagan. And according to David and what survivors tell us and his insane journal, he had sent a copy of this manifesto that he had written to Ronald Reagan. Don't know what the goal was there. But with permission, the teachers brought in books, art supplies, and a television. They were focused on keeping the children occupied, which all of this is so weird to me because I distinctly remember a couple of things from 1986. I don't know if you do, but January 28th, 1986, we were kept occupied by television to see the Challenger launch and explode. So that's going to be 4 months before this. Which they bring in. Yeah.
That's one of my worst memories.
Yeah, it's one of mine too. So because Princess has gone to town hall, police are aware, and apparently they have a police force at this point, or someone they can call. And police and parents are gathering at the school. The thing is, everybody's in this one room. And Doris Young, for her part, tries to calm these children who are obviously in a stressful situation. And as this goes on, it's not going to be clear immediately that they're hostages until suddenly they realize that they are indeed hostages.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, they don't know at first, what's happening until it's probably an hour into this when they're like, something's wrong.
Right, which is something I feel like, I don't know. I don't know exactly the dynamics of everything, but I guess maybe they could have come up with the 3 different stories for the 3 different types of people they would have to convince. But to me, I'd be like, yeah, we're getting out of here.
Well, so she's literally telling the children to think of this as an adventure movie, and they're going to have this great story to tell their grandchildren one day. I think she's just as out of it as David is. I don't know if this is drug use or what. But the children are obviously in distress. They're crying. They're complaining of headaches because the smell of the gasoline is terrible. Someone had a birthday, so songs are sung to the birthday person. All the children simply want to go home. And it's reported that when they were singing songs, including the birthday song for whoever had a birthday that day, that David and Doris are singing along. So the songs did not fix the mood. And that's when more items are brought in to try and help these kids get their minds off what's actually happening. Because the adults know. They see the guns. They know what's happening. Throughout this standoff, David's psychosis is starting to show. He's growing increasingly agitated and irritable, probably because no one is responding to his demands, because I'm not actually sure how he communicated these demands.
To the air?
Right. He's sort of walking around yelling bankruptcy. We have an account from a woman named Carol Peterson, who was a second grade teacher at the Cokeville Elementary School, and that comes from wyohistory.org. She says, "We could tell that he was becoming very nervous. As I sat there and watched him, I could feel he was becoming agitated. He just had these big rings of perspiration. I was frightened, and I felt that we needed to do something to try and calm him down, to be careful. So we decided to take some masking tape, and we taped what I think it was an 8-foot square in the middle of the room. And he pushed the cart, this homemade bomb, into it. And we told the children this was the magic square. Don't go past the square." So the children just sat right all around him watching him. And I'm sure that was making him very nervous. Or the fact that he has no idea what he's doing. That could also be what's happening here. About 2.5 hours into all of this, is when they have transferred back and forth. And I don't know the order, but at one point, David has the Dead Man Switch string, and then Doris has it, David has it. About 2.5 hours in, it ends up on Doris's wrist. And David goes into a bathroom that is connecting this first grade classroom to a second grade classroom. And during this time, Doris had developed a headache from the fumes in the room. She has this string around her wrist, and she raises her wrist to her head. And when she does that, she unintentionally activates the triggering mechanism. And this bizarre bomb explodes. And it severely injures Doris. And it fills the room with black smoke and pockets of fire. I don't know if you've ever seen what happens when gasoline suddenly catches fire and goes everywhere. It sort of sits on top of whatever it's on and burns. Sometimes it catches, sometimes it doesn't, what's underneath it. But immediately following this happening, the teachers react very quickly. They push these kids away, out the windows, into the hallway. And it causes chaos because these parents, who police have kind of barricaded away from the building at this point, they're rushing forward. The police are trying to assist. And David opens the door from the connecting bathroom, and all hell has broken loose. There's black smoke everywhere. Everything's on fire. Everyone is screaming and everyone is rushing around. So he sees Doris and how severely injured she is, and he shoots her in the head and kills her. He then shoots and wounds a man named John Miller, who is a music teacher who had been trapped in this room with them. He's trying to flee. And then David slams the bathroom door shut. He steps back with one of the pistols, and he fires a single shot to his head and kills himself. During all of this chaos, Doris's burning body was expelled through a window. When the bomb had detonated, it had blown loose ceiling tiles up, and the open windows had acted as vents. So what this did is it dispersed the concussion, the explosive power of the bomb. And according to a bomb technician who's commenting on yohistory.org, he says you could see that the roof tiles in there had been lifted up and out of their brackets. He said that he didn't think that they were planning on this particular room or how it was working. He thought that they were planning on getting everyone onto a school bus and aborted it because they weren't able to convince everyone to go outside. So
right, and part of that was predicated on the fact that I guess it came out later that in Arizona when he lived there, he had built another IED, I guess similar to the one that he had there, and he had exploded a sealed bus.
Yes. I am trying to keep a straight face with all this because people are injured. So 79 children are taken to different hospitals. So there's 154 people in this room. 79 of these 154 people are treated mostly for second-degree burns and smoke inhalation. They're taken around the area in Wyoming to different hospitals and into Idaho and Utah because this area in Wyoming did not have the capacity to treat 79 people at one time. And survivors start telling these stories pretty much immediately. And investigators, family members, hospital personnel, in the days and weeks right after this event, they come forward and they tell a lot of stories about that day. But one of the things that emerges is that this is a Mormon community that really came together in sort of the face of this tragedy. Regardless of what you think of different religions or whatever, the community part is the important part here. I think there's a book out called Witness to Miracles, and there was another one, something about angels, and it ends up being a CBS made-for-TV movie called To Save the Children. I think the other book was maybe The Cokeville Miracle, and it was written by Hart Wixom, I think. He writes a lot about Latter-day Saints stuff. I read this story, and I realized that we were doing hostage-taking stuff, and I just had to talk to you about this because even though it's it all kind of takes place in under 3 hours, it is one of the weirdest situations I have ever heard of.
It is really weird. I think part of the issue, especially reading it now, I think part of the issue was it's so weird and unbelievable. They couldn't even put together what was happening.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately what, you were asking, how did all these people get involved? I think in 1986, Cokeville, Wyoming, the last thing you're thinking is that these two crazy people are going to blow up the school.
Exactly. And I feel like because it is such a small community, if they knew them, they would be more likely to take their word for why they need to all gather together. But it just seems like a really strange situation. I saw where, I can't remember if you went over this or not, but they discovered that 2 of the 3 blasting caps failed to detonate.
Oh, I don't know if I mentioned that. The wires were also cut on the tuna can, and I wondered if Princess did that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Somebody did, right? At some point, somebody had the, I don't know, wherewithal, or I'm not really sure what's going on there. He knew the device, at least its predecessor, had been successful, right?
Right.
Because he had blown up a school bus. And you said that he killed his wife to put her out of her misery, essentially.
Yeah.
I was wondering if he didn't kill his wife because she blew the bomb up.
Possibly, on YO History, I'm going to say this kind of to you, and also so if people want to go look at this, YO History has this really cool thing under the category Oral Histories where they talk to a lot of these survivors, including like the people involved in investigating the aftermath. And that's an interesting question that you bring up. Like, she kind of failed the mission. I was wondering a little bit differently, like, did he want to make sure that they were reincarnated together?
We have no idea. I think I assume the fact that she had a headache and she put her hand up to her head and caused the dead man switch to activate and blow up. I assume that's somebody recounting it, right?
Yeah.
I would, I take whatever they say for what it is, but it's interesting because, it is possible she did it on purpose. It's also possible that he realized how wounded she was and
put her out of misery.
Put her out of the misery. I just don't know. And I also don't entirely understand the prerogative here. I wasn't sure if the plan was actually to kill everybody. It was very confusing because it seems kind of pointless to like demand almost $1 billion and then blow everything up.
Yeah. I looked at this and I read through the interviews and stuff, and it is an absolutely fascinating story. But the conclusion that I kind of came to, and that's why I mentioned all of what I mentioned at the beginning, these people were like cult members without a cult who thought like,
he was trying to start a cult, it seems like he was trying to have like an indentured servitude
of intelligent people,
cult.
Which is weird. That sounds like I don't know about you. If I were starting my cult right now, I definitely am not going to go to a local elementary school and be like, send me all the smart ones.
Well, right. And obviously, I mean, how was he going to lead a bunch of smart people?
Right. And like, I never, in all the reading I've done on this, I've never been able to figure out, because I don't think anyone really knows. I've never been able to figure out, like, was this just insanity? Because I see clear signs of like some kind of mental disorder having happened. But it also seems to be affecting Doris, and I can't tell like if she's just a follower of him and going along with it, or she's also had so could it have been something environmental that they ran into? But whatever's happening here, sometimes insanity almost looks like genius. Parts of this do, but none of it makes any sense.
It is possible that while, in retrospect, we see how insane it is, she might have actually believed in it and went along with him because she really did have faith in what he was saying. It's always really hard to tell, especially from when you're part of the inner circle, right? Because all the teachers from the outside looking in, they were like, something is wrong. They're putting tape around the bomb so nobody jostles it or whatever. Yeah. And, people are seeing this is crazy. But at the same time, it's not really, so the police never show up that we see, right? In the narrative of the story.
No, they're there, but they're outside. They don't come in. The inciting event for the end of this is when she triggers the explosion, and then that chaos is kind of covered for, it's no longer a controllable situation for them, for Doris and Dean.
Right, and so either he was mad at her for blowing it up, or he gave up, right? One way or the other, but he ends up killing himself, and literally nothing happened. Nothing was accomplished.
Yeah. And that's one of those things, so I think, the most rational thing he did that day was to shoot her and then kill himself.
Well, I would say that, yeah, I would say I'm glad that nobody else, there were some injuries, but I don't think there were any other fatalities, right? It was just the two perpetrators.
It's just the perpetrators. There's 78 burns and smoke inhalation injuries, and then one bullet wound in Sean Miller, the music teacher who was trying to get away.
Right, but he survived though. This is it's a weird situation. I do think that he just had lost his mind for whatever reason. It is possible it was environmental. Do we know how old he was?
David Young.
He was 39
years old.
Oh wait, no, that's not right. I'm sorry. It was 39 years ago.
Hold on. 18, 22, 23. He was 23 in 1979. He's 30.
28.
I think he's
Okay.
30 years old.
Maybe drugs then.
Yeah, I went on and read how it affected the community, and I wanted to mention this one interesting thing. The lead investigator for this case is a guy named Ron Hartley. He had 4 kids in the room that day. That's how small a place this is.
Oh, yeah, no question. I mean, the underlying, like thinking the underlying part of that out, it seems like it would be some sort of crafty thinking,
Yeah.
right? But like all the other different kind of stupid stuff, it doesn't seem like he was thinking very clearly. Like, I have no idea who he demanded the money from.
Yeah. And the other thing I read is he had like the boxes of his journals. I think there were 50 total documents with him. So like, where did he send them to?
Exactly. Like who was going to do this? And I guess he thought it was going to catch the right person's attention. I don't really know, but we've kind of got a split thing going here because he did say like he was going to be the leader of all the intelligent children or whatever, right? Which is,
Right.
I don't know, weird. But then also he makes like ransom demands, right? Or hostage, whatever they're called, right? Because he's saying I need $2 million per kid. It was nearly $1 billion and what the value would be today.
Right.
And so you kind of got 2 different things happening. And I don't know. I think he just lost his mind.
Yeah, I don't think we pulled all the threads on this. If people want to read about it, there was allegedly a third person that was with the 2 guys in the van, but he got out before he knew anything about it. I think his name was Harrison. He comes up in some of the interviews. There's a lot of fascinating perspectives from the parents and the survivors. And it is just the strangest thing to me that like we end up with like this guy, this very strange former town police officer, like essentially blowing himself up. And like all of these kids survive. That doesn't happen in all of the cases that we cover where, except for the perpetrators, no one really dies. Particularly when there's 154 hostages. I'm going to reiterate this one more time, and I swear I won't say it again in this episode because they're almost done. They're in a first grade classroom. What in the world?
It's unimaginable.
Like, I can't even picture that in my head. I literally cannot picture how you put 154 people into this room.
I don't know. And then when she was saying that they put like an 8-foot square, I was like, how is there 8 foot available?
It's probably around the teacher's desk in the front of the room.
Guess so.
I bet you everybody's like in like movie classrooms, you have the front row of desks. I'm picturing all 154 people are behind the front row of desks to the wall.
Yeah, I guess so, because that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, how could there possibly be room for that? But yeah, probably.
This is terrible to say, but I feel like it's an appropriate way to close this episode. I do not think I will ever get the visual image of Doris Young burning body being passed out the building and left on the lawn out of my head. Anytime I think of this case, that will be the thing I see forever.
Yeah, I mean, kind of.
These teachers opening up those windows saved everybody.
They did.
I think the explosion would have been much bigger if the gasoline fumes, because that's the thing that fuels gasoline anyways. If the fumes had been allowed to like concentrate in that space, I think it would have damaged, I think it would hurt more people.
Well, from what I heard, for one thing, the wires were cut on 2 parts of the bomb, right? So it was only a partial explosion. And then the force behind it was dissipated further than I guess they intended for it to be.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting concept that was for absolutely nothing. So to me, it's like 154 people, now will have PTSD for the rest of their lives because of this lunatic, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything else on this one. The way that it shows up in like a lot of popular media is with like this religious undertone. And I just wanted to tell it without that, from the perspective of what if this is just like some weirdos and they have these ideologies that don't make a lot of sense. And that's how we end up here with this whole concept of we need $2 million per child, which
They should have asked for like $1 billion per child, because like they literally weren't getting anything. They could have asked for anything that they wouldn't get.
Yeah, there's tons of articles about this out there. I'm sure there's some summaries on the internet. I've heard that 0 equals infinity is somewhere.
I found it.
Oh, did you find it?
Yep.
It did not. It's not something that I researched for this because I figured it would be not all that brilliant.
Well, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It didn't help me understand anything any better. It's weird.
Well, that's all I got on this one. We still have we have a lot more hostage taking episodes. I will say that this one is one of the most unique like weapons with this whole bomb that's like not working at all.
It is really interesting. I would like to. I wonder if anybody's ever said, "I cut the wires" or whatever. Because if not, that's almost like divine intervention, right?
Yeah, I couldn't find it, but I did find where the investigators stood around one day and like they talked to each other and they were like, we have no idea how that happened. We don't think the kids did it. It had to have been a pair of wire cutters, and we just couldn't figure out like who had done it. And they sort of they leave it at that. But I look at it and I'm like, I wonder if it's the kid or the wife. I don't think it's going to be David unless like.
Well, unless this was all just like a he decided for infamy and decided to go out with a bang, right? He was going to commit suicide the whole time. And I don't know. I always wonder if sometimes, especially really inexplicable situations like this one, I wonder if like, oh, they're just committing suicide the really long way. Because
that's kind of how this feels, yeah.
Because they want, obviously, we're talking about it now, right? And it's a bizarre situation, but in some ways, it's like guaranteeing their legacy. It's like sacrificing any sort of good thing about them, right? For infamy, but to be remembered.
Oh yeah, and it's definitely the opposite of the holiday spirit. He definitely went out with a bang.
Special consideration was given to True Crime Excess by LabrottieCreations.com. If you have a moment in your favorite app, please go on and give us a review or a 5-star rating. It helps us get noticed in the crowd. This is True Crime XS. True Crime Excess is brought to you by John and Meg. It's written, produced, edited, and posted by John and Meg. You can always support True Crime Excess through patreon.com, or if you have a story you'd like them to cover, you can reach them at truecrimeaccess.com. Thank you for joining us.